Hello, and welcome back to something completely different. This is the Exceed fighting system. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that for my audience, none of you have ever actually played this game or are not even familiar with it, and that's totally okay. This is a in real life card game that I've picked up and find to be quite fantastic. The core idea of the game is that, well, I guess I can explain it better than this, so let's go from here. You and your opponent both play characters. I'm still learning to use Tabletop Simulator, pardon my issues. You and your opponent both pick characters, and these characters are obviously from either Street Fighter or some other fighting game, or they have some, actually the first couple seasons were all homebrew characters, so they have a lot of homebrew stuff. Anyway, and this represents a fighting game match, I suppose, between two players. So here I've picked Mr. Bison, or M. Bison, and as you can see, we've got this 9 space strip here. So after the appropriate number of coin flips to determine heads or tails, we pick who goes first. My opponent would obviously be playing another character in here. I'm currently waiting for an opponent to join, so while we're waiting, let's just go ahead and show, not tell. Draw a series of cards to illustrate the game. The game is broken down like so. You have a hand of up to 7 cards. On your turn, you can take any of, there we go, if you look at the left, these available actions. Draw a card, move, boost, change cards, shuffle, exceed. Which, after doing, would allow you to then draw 1 additional card. So, for example, I could draw 2 cards for my turn. Or I could discard a card and then move my character 1 space for my turn, etc. Or I could discard any number of cards and draw that many back, to dig for a card I really need. But the most interesting mechanic of the game is the strike. When you strike on your turn, you choose a card from hand, play it face down onto the board. Your opponent, because of the strike, is forced to do the same, so they will choose a card from hand and play it. And then simultaneously, you reveal your cards. Here this strike reads before close 2. So you'll notice that on the top left there's a range, a power, and a speed for this card. That basically dictates at what range the attack will hit. The speed is the most important. First, it's the priority, which move goes off first. So let's say, for example, I was attacking with Assault, but my opponent was responding with a Cross. Their speed of 6 would outmatch mine of 5, and they would go first. So just because I happen to need an example, let's put Ryu on the board temporarily. So say Ryu is attacking with Cross. He would go off at speed 6. We check range, and he is in fact at range 1 to 2, so Cross would hit. It would hit for 3 damage, which I would take. And then the after effect of retreat 3 would go off, allowing him to retreat 3. Now my move wouldn't go off at all, because having taken damage, just like in a fighting game, the damage you take prevents you from getting your attack off. It's like using a light move to prevent a heavy move from going off by canceling it out. So this would then just go to discard. More importantly, because Ryu would have hit with this, it would end up here in his gauge, and he could then use that as a currency to either draw extra or empower further attacks with criticals, or even flip over and become Super Ryu with his Exceed ability. Not explaining things, thinking. Yes. So a big part of the game immediately becomes understanding what cards are good at what range and what to expect from an opponent. Let's say that we were both standing here. I know the total move space available. I know that these are all of the basic attacks, which both decks share, all 8 of these. And you'll notice they span the speeds from 0 through 7. Further, I know that each character has a specific move list. I don't actually see it here, but I'm pretty sure it should be included in the deck. Huh. I don't... Yeah, okay, well, there's definitely supposed to be here. I just don't know where to look for it. Let me see if maybe if I search the whole deck I can find it. These are all basic moves. These are all moves. Huh, no instruction card. I have to figure that out. I'll probably have to ask my opponent where that is. In any event, but yeah, there's move lists for each individual character as well. So knowing what potential options my opponent could be using against me allows me to then guess what they're likely to actually make use of against me. So in this case, for example, I know that cross exists, that it's a range 1 or 2 attack, and it's speed 6. So if I use Assault at this range, which would allow me to close in for 2, hit for a whopping 4 damage, and gain advantage so it stays my turn, I'm taking the risk that Ryu has Cross. But let's say that he has just 1 card in his hand and that's it, and that in his discard I see one of the other crosses. Maybe I'm not as worried about him having Cross, because, well, what are the odds he still has it? But then, again, there are also reactive or more reactive moves. Here, let's draw some cards and see if I can find one. So if I play a block, for example, well, that's not going to go first. It's going to go second, and it's going to block with 2 armor and then potentially more armor after that. Another mechanic I haven't yet explained is guard. I mentioned how if you take damage, your move doesn't go off, right? Well, in this situation, you'll notice that there's 6 guard on this attack. So there are definitely moves in fighting games where even if you get hit, you get to armor through that damage and then still go off. Super armor is represented by this property called guard. If Ryu were to deal 3 damage at this range to me, I would still take the 3 damage, but the guard would absorb that stun effect, and so I would get a counterattack off, and that's where it gets super tactical. Let's say that I were to play a sweep down, face down here. At this range, I would have to be nervous that Ryu is going to play cross and retreat, and even though I get to go off, I'll be out of range. But at this range, I would be pretty confident, because even if he had the standard range 1 grasp and outspeeded me, 3 damage is not really that concerning, and his ability to throw me 1 or 2 after the grab and throw isn't going to put me out of range of a range 3 attack like sweep. Here, let me pull up sweep again to make my point. Where did I put that thing? Oh, I put it here. So from this position, I might be more confident in attacking with a sweep. From this position, well, it's kind of 50-50, isn't it? Like, what do I think he's going to do there? I think he's going to dive out of range, which is faster than sweep, get behind me, cross me, and then become invincible because that's what dive does, then it's a bad time to sweep. But from here, where even though he could go first with a dive and hit me for 5, I would get a 6 damage counterattack. Sweep is even better. But he's out of range initially, so would he actually use a dive? But does he think I'll use a dive from this range? And knowing that he knows that I know that he knows that I know that he knows, what will he counter with? That kind of mind games, that footsies of juking back and forth, guessing your opponent's next thing to do, and trying to counter it with your own better player, outplay them, that is the heart and soul of a good fighting game, and this game captures that sensation beautifully with these simple mechanics. I'll give you another example. Early on, when our HPs are high, there's a lot more ability to take a big hit and return a big hit. But when, HP is down to the wire and you've got your magic pixel level health left, you suddenly start worrying about every little hit, right? Suddenly a move like this doesn't seem as good, because if you take 4 damage, you might guard through it, but you'll also be dead, right? Whereas a move like, where's Assault? This seems excellent, because close 2 at speed 5, well, that's the maximum distance and speed. There's not a lot of speed 7 attacks at this range. Of course, I'm up against Ryu, so he could use Hadouken criticaled to be speed 6 and hit me at this range. Again, you're supposed to have a move list for your opponents so that you can, at your leisure, review exactly what moves are available to them at any time. And this maximizes the skill component and minimizes the luck component of the game. You're also allowed to review the discard piles at any time, so you can see everything they've done and then systematically plan your counter. And much like in poker, this actually makes the game more interesting that you're able to predict your opponent, so there's kind of some rationale and logic to it, instead of just blind luck, because your opponent doesn't know what to do anyway, so he's just hitting buttons. And of course, like with the fighting game, sometimes that is your opponent. He's just button mashing, and a skilled player should be able to most of the time get the advantage over an unskilled player who button mashes. I say most because, well, we all know a button masher who's beaten someone who's probably better than them at the game before. Anyway, that's all I've got for the moment. I'm going to see if I can't get someone to play, and I'll show you this game in action. Until then, yeah, prepare to see some exceed. And thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.